A Friend Flinches Not by Ignium807. Chapter 2. Pain is an old friend in Geralt's line of work, as is the memory of pain and the memory of the weapons that inflict it. So when he wakes, thoughts bright with the whistle of an arrow and Eskel shouting in his ear, it is not so much the pain that surprises him as the absence of it. Arrows hurt, like hell. The initial impact is bad enough, but ripping them free from the flesh afterwards, sewing up jagged skin and dousing the wound in alcohol, may well be one of the worst pains Geralt is familiar with. Healing from wounds like that is a slow, aching process, even with all the mutations in his blood. He knows what the days will feel like, knows the itching and the inflammation, knows how he will have to hold himself still to prevent the ripping of haphazard stitches. Geralt has dealt with arrows before. He hasn't dealt with this. His bandages are fresh and easy to pull away. There are stitches underneath, yes, but they are neat and regular, professional. There is pain, but it is dull, and there is itching so faint he hardly has to think to ignore it. Geralt's body is strung out and weary. This, too, is usual, though he is accustomed to feeling as though he was dragged through the jaws of death. The weariness he wakes to feels more like he is gone for too long of a run than anything a monster's claws could leave on him. He opens his eyes to the morning sun and sits up slowly. The stitches in his skin pull slightly as he moves, and he runs a hand over them in gratitude. Geralt recognizes Jasker's work when he sees it. Vesemir's look nothing like this, and since he taught the witchers what little they know of healing, so do his brothers. Laughter echoes from beyond his door, low and sharp. Geralt recognizes Lambert's voice, though his tone is new. Even after all these months, it feels new. Laughter, for the sake of joy and not of cynicism, is atypical in the halls of Kaer Morhen. His brothers tease each other plenty. They mock and they joke and they snicker. Nothing like the full-body head-tossing laughter that Geralt hears now. It means Jasker is nearby. He's proven right a second later when Jasker enters the room, bumping the door open with his hip because his hands are occupied with a large tray. Lambert stumbles in behind him, chuckling. Jasker's eyes go wide when they meet Geralt's and he fumbles. "Why aren't you sitting up?" he exclaims. He shoves the food into Lambert's hands and plops into Geralt's personal space, pushing him down with a touch that is both light and firm, demanding compliance without harshness, as if Geralt could do anything but acquiesce.
"Good morning, Jasker."
Yes, good morning." There's a tinge of exasperation in Jasker's tone, but it is rendered meaningless by the fond concern that swims in his eyes. That worry hasn't diminished even after all these years of seeing Geralt's injuries. A selfish part of him hopes it never will. It's good to know someone cares. "I'm so terribly glad you're all right, love, but I spent ages on those stitches and I won't have you ripping them now." Silk-soft fingers trail over Geralt's chest. They trace the ridges of old scars and dance around the edges of his new wounds, still uncovered. Lambert presses a roll into Geralt's hands as Jasker leans back to pull the vial from the table next to the bed. He tips some liquid into his hand and rubs it over the stitches with a touch so light that if he couldn't see Jasker with his own two eyes, Geralt might swear it wasn't there. "Bandits!" Jasker mutters. "Bloody idiots, more like." He finishes with the liquid and wraps clean linen around Geralt's middle. Geralt isn't paying any sort of attention. The pain is drowned out by the smell of Jasker's skin, flowery and soft with sleep. He's half straddling Geralt to lean over his chest, hair mussed and tickling Geralt's nose while he works. Geralt lets his eyes slide shut.
"Jasker,"
he says low, and his lover pulls back enough to look him in the eyes. Jasker drops a kiss to his cheek, rough with a day's worth of stubble. "You had me worried, you big lout. It wasn't even a monster this time."
"I don't say it was a monster," Lambert interjects. "The humankind, but a monster all the same."
Jasker clambers off Geralt's lap carefully and hands him a glass of water. "Yes, there are far too many of that sort of monster around for my taste. Glad you and Eskel could rid us of a few of them."
"Where is Eskel?"
Geralt asks. "Resting. He got injured and tried to hide it for a while. Remind you of anyone?" Jasker shoots him a glare and waves his hand a little in the air for effect. "Anyway, I sent him to bed. If he gets up one moment before I tell him to, he knows there will be hell to pay." Geralt arcs an eyebrow. Jasker arcs one right back. You think I couldn't?
Beat Eskel in a fight?
Geralt says.
Never.
Jasker scoffs. Who said anything about fighting? I just refused to wash his hair until he agreed to take better care of himself. Wouldn't last a week, I assure you. His first instinct is to argue, but really, a week is generous. The force of Jasker's disapproval is crushing. Last time he stopped washing Geralt's hair, the Witcher broke down in 2 days. He doubts Eskel would be any better. Worse, probably, considering how pained he still looks when he has to leave Jasker's arms in the morning. They share a room. Geralt has seen that look on both his brothers' faces more than he cares to acknowledge. Decades of loneliness exact a toll that Geralt lacks the words to explain. He tried to, once, before everything, on a night with just enough ale in his stomach and Jasker pliant in his arms. The bed is soft beneath them. Geralt's lips are right next to Jasker's ear, their bodies tangled in a mess of limbs and blankets. After 2 dead kikimoras and a few rounds of enthusiastic sex, Geralt is ready to sleep for a week.
Tired.
He mumbles and Jasker laughs. Sleep, then, darling. Jasker shifts backward and tilts his head, trying to catch Geralt's eye. Amusement dances at the corner of his mouth. We didn't get this nice bed for nothing, you know. Another one of my brilliant ideas. He chuckles at Geralt's disgruntled glare. What would you do without me? It's a joke. Just a joke, and a stupid one at that, seeing as Geralt is the one who talked to the innkeeper to get the room, paid for by coin he earned. But there is something in the air, something in the firelight that glows in Jasker's eyes. Words rise to his lips.
I used to sleep outside,
He says. Oh no. Jasker shoots him a quizzical smile. We still do, mostly.
No.
This is important. The weight of it crushes Geralt's chest, blood and lungs and bones screaming at him to make Jasker understand.
I used to sleep on a bedroll, on the ground, in the rain.
They carry proper blankets now, enough to form a bed of sorts on the road. It's heavy and impractical, but it makes Jasker happy, and somewhere along the line it began to make Geralt happy too. Sleep comes so much easier without feeling every stray pebble digging into his back. Jasker shifts in his arms, turning to face Geralt properly. He tucks a strand of hair behind Geralt's ear, even though it wasn't really in the way. And that's the thing, isn't it? Stupid little gestures like that for no practical reason other than to touch and reassure.
It was cold.
He dries. Jasker frowns at him, and Geralt pushes down the urge to growl. Words, he decides, are useless. Pitiful tools for an insurmountable job. There are no words for the way loneliness hollowed him out. Nothing to describe the shame and bitterness that ate at his flesh when he went to brothels on nights when he wasn't in the mood for sex, choosing whichever girl looked like she'd take the longest. Just for those few extra minutes with hands on his skin, to feel like a man for a night. What flowery prose can explain the leaden weight of knowing that his brothers suffered too? They were taught the same. They are treated the same. Eskel buries his longing in the thick armor of professionalism. Lambert hides it behind anger and tankards of beer. Their actions are different, but the ache is a mirror for his own.
It was cold,
He says again.
and I slept alone.
Strong arms wrap around his stomach. Geralt forgets sometimes how well-muscled Jasker is. He is no witcher, no fighter, but he has walked the path by Geralt's side for years, and his body has not escaped unchanged. He kisses Geralt languidly, possessively. Jasker kisses with single-minded intent until every single one of Geralt's muscles has unlocked and melted into the mattress content. Only then does he pull away. Well, he says, as though he heard every thought Geralt could not put into words, and perhaps he did. It's warm in here, is it not? Even if you go get covered in swamp water again tomorrow, I'll still be here to stoke the fire and dry you off. Every time, Geralt. I'll be here. When Jasker finally gives permission for him to walk around a little, Geralt goes to find Vesemir. He moves with halting steps through the halls, even though a potion has taken the edge off the pain, and sinks gratefully into one of the chairs in Vesemir's study.
Glad to see you up and about.
Vesemir greets.
Glad I'm not dead.
The older man hums.
It's the bard you have to thank for that. I doubted him at first. I had a right to, considering his main profession. But I was wrong. Whoever trained him was a master.
Confusion mixes into the throbbing pain from his wounds. Geralt grits his teeth against them both.
Trained him?
In medicine.
Vesemir clarifies. For Geralt, it is no clarification at all.
He doesn't have any medical training.
Vesemir rounds on him with disbelief in his eyes.
Of course he does. He surgically removed 3 barbed arrowheads from your chest without nicking any major blood vessels or tearing the skin more than necessary. Sewed you up after, too, better than you could have done for yourself.
He points at Geralt at the neatly bound wounds mere inches from his heart and says,
Where do you think he learned it? Oxenford?
Geralt is struck down, silent as the gears grind to life in his skull. Hundreds of moments flash behind his eyes. Jasker setting a broken bone in exactly the right place. Jasker popping a dislocated shoulder back in without so much as a wince. Jasker sewing up claw marks. Jasker matching berries into poultices. Jasker ordering bed rest with the authority of someone who knows. Jasker. And the fact that he apparently became a doctor overnight and Geralt
Didn't notice!
He lifts his fingers to the fresh stitches and remembers how, just that morning, Geralt had wondered at their professionalism.
I thought he picked it up from watching me.
Idiot.
Vesemir says with a feeling.
You were useless in our healing lessons. If he picked it up from anyone, it would be Eskel. And even Eskel isn't that good.
Words are useless, worthless, pointless things. Geralt stays silent. He stares at the wall past Vesemir's shoulder and does his best not to look as
moronic
as he feels. From the glimmer of amusement in Vesemir's eyes, it doesn't work.
Not quite so hard,
Jasker advises. Lambert huffs out a breath and loosens his grip on Jasker's shoulder. He sweeps his thumb in a circle for the light.
That's a little too soft, actually. You need enough pressure that it's felt, but not so much that you'll bruise me.
Lambert growls, a low rumble of intimidation. Jasker merely laughs. His ribs rise and fall beneath Lambert's hands, warm and alive and terribly delicate.
Sorry,
Lambert says.
Don't apologize for this, dear. You're doing me a favor either way.
He pushes his shoulder back against Lambert and sighs.
But you did ask to learn, so I'm offering constructive criticism.
Jasker is face down on the bed, shirtless, and Lambert is straddling his waist, hands slick with oil as he runs his fingers down tense muscles. Usually it's him on the bed enjoying Jasker's touch after a rough fight. He wants tonight to be different. Massages, Lambert thinks, should be easy. Find tension in muscle, apply pressure. He knows muscles better than any scholar of anatomy, and he is intimately acquainted with tension. He's just clueless when it comes to relieving it. Lambert's wariness is compounded by Jasker's vulnerability. He offered a massage, and Jasker lay right down, teasing while Lambert got ready as though he hadn't just bared his neck to a predator. The trust written into that gesture hurts to think about. Lambert looks down at the body beneath him and knows 100 different ways to break it apart, but he is certain, knows it like he knows the heft of a blade in his hand, that the thought of danger never crossed Jasker's mind. He drags a palm down the column of Jasker's spine, like taking a whetstone to a sword. One long stroke. Jasker makes a face that looks a little pained, but it quickly drops away and he groans, shifting closer.
There you are,
Jasker says.
Perfect.
The wariness is replaced with pride, and Lambert repeats the motion. Satisfaction glows low in his stomach as he watches the stress bleed out of Jasker's body. He moves his hands from hips to shoulders, applying pressure with the heel of his palms.
Good. Lovely.
A crack from the door catches Lambert's attention, but he doesn't move. There are no threats at Camorin. He digs his fingers into ropey muscle, careful not to press too hard, and revels in the noise it pulls from Jasker.
Looks like you two are having fun,
Eskel says from the door. Jasker grunts happily, and Lambert nods. He's ashamed just for a moment, embarrassed to be caught in such an intimate act. But this is Eskel. No man on earth, save perhaps Geralt, is less likely to mock him for needing this. From the fire smoldering in his eyes, Eskel might need it too.
How's your son?
Jasker mumbles. Eskel rolls his eyes and lifts his shirt. The gash on his side is nearly gone. It was shallow to begin with, so rest and mutations have healed the worst of it already. Fucking witch of healing, Jasker says. I'm jealous. Lambert can't see his eyes, but he knows his bard. They're probably soft with emotion, shouted and bright all at once, as he says, But I'm glad you're all right. I'm fine. The day a pack of bandits takes down a witcher is the day the sun goes dark. Jasker scoffs. Don't tempt Yennefer. I think she'd make the sun go dark if it meant she could sleep in longer around here.
It was one time, Lambert complains. How the fuck was I supposed to know she isn't a morning person?
Jasker does his best to shoot him an incredulous glare, though it's ruined by how his face is mashed against the pillow. Does she look like a morning person? You're lucky she didn't burn your face off.
She's welcome to try.
Like I said, don't tempt her. Eskel settles on the side of the bed, and a glint appears in Jasker's eye. That means trouble. He nudges Lambert's hands away and sits up. Eskel's done. Ignoring both Witcher's noises of surprise, he hops up from the bed and ushers Eskel into the spot he vacated. Just be careful of the injury. It shouldn't be too hard to avoid.
It isn't.
Lambert settles himself over Eskel's hips the same way he had on Jasker, and his hands trace Eskel's back with a confidence and familiarity that surprises even himself. Intimacy is easy with Jasker, who is so accepting of it. Lambert is still working on that same closeness with his brothers. As Eskel shifts beneath his touch, laughing at something Jasker says, Lambert thinks this is a wonderful place to start. Geralt finds him at sunset. He's tucked up in the room they once used as a bedroom. Both of them sleep downstairs now with the others, but they keep this room for moments of privacy, for conversations to be had out of earshot of others, and for sex. There's a bag open on the floor in front of him, its contents spilled haphazardly in piles as he measures what look like flower petals into a tiny vial. Geralt watches him from the doorway for a few minutes. He's ethereal like this, hair mussed and cheeks ruddy from the warmth of a fire. If Geralt didn't need him so badly on the path, it would be tempting to keep him here, warm and safe.
Jasker,
he says, and Jasker looks up with a smile on his face. Evening, darling. Glad to see you, though I thought you'd be helping your brothers polish off that barrel of ale. Geralt shakes his head.
Wanted to spend some time with you.
The little things, he thinks, are deadly, because that one simple sentence, so easy to say, has lit up Jasker's face like a bonfire, like a sunrise, like bandits and arrows don't exist because everything is right with the world. Well, come on in. Jasker breathes. He gestures weakly around him, as if uncertain, and Geralt is struck by the very insistent urge to wipe that uncertainty from the face of the earth. The floor behind Jasker is clear. Geralt settles there, his legs bracketing Jasker's hips, his front pressed close to Jasker's back. It would aggravate his wounds if he leaned in too much, but he's careful. Not for his own sake. Geralt couldn't care less about a little pain from a healing wound. It would upset Jasker, though, and that is unacceptable. He wraps his arms around Jasker from the back and plucks the vial out of his hand.
What is this?
Lobelia. Helps with fevers if you make a tea out of it. Geralt points at another vial. This one is orange, full of something liquid. It rests innocuously by Jasker's left foot.
And that one?
Calendula salve. For burns.
For burns.
Geralt repeats. He doesn't get burned all that often. Monsters fight more with claws and screams than fire, but Jasker has it anyway. Jasker has it, and Geralt knows it works because he had some smeared all over a burn wound a few months back after a run-in with a particularly angry sorcerer who had a penchant for enchanting torches. A ridiculous, unpredictable situation that had been, and Jasker was prepared for it. Geralt wonders how much else he has missed over the years. How many other skills has Jasker learned for him? How many times has he saved Geralt's life or just improved it slightly, without so much as a grunt of thanks because Geralt can't be bothered to notice what's right under his nose? Too many, sure. Far too many.
Where did you train?
Geralt asks. Jasker stiffens in his arms, his scent turning nervous. Train? He says lightly.
Practice. Learn. You know what I mean, Jasker.
He gestures at the menagerie of medical supplies around them.
Who taught you all this?
Jasker slumps.
The game is up, huh? I'm not surprised it took you this long, and I was sort of hoping I'd be able to hide it forever.
It's not an answer to Geralt's question. He squeezes his arms around Jasker's middle in reminder.
Oh, all right, it was Irene Radford. Flipped Cadwin. The same.
Geralt wants to be surprised at that, truly he does. But it makes perfect sense that Jasker learned basic medical skills from one of the most famous physicians on the continent. Of course he did. He is a Viscount, after all.
Why?
Geralt asks. Jasker turns as best he can without dislodging Geralt's hold on him. Disbelief and frustration color his tone in equal amounts.
Because you have no sense of self-preservation, that's why. You run towards monsters with your swords, and I get it, that's your job, but those things look way smaller compared to beasts than they do to men, and you always wind up hurt somehow, even if it's minor.
His voice pitches higher, more strained.
There's poison, which you don't mention sometimes, you bastard, so I had to memorize the fucking bestiary just in case. Fascinating stuff, actually, but not when something nasty is trying to relocate your organs to the outside of your body.
His hands move about, restless. Geralt fights down the urge to grab them and hold them still. He knows better by now. Jasker's rant has to run its course, and Geralt needs to listen while he does because he hasn't been paying enough attention lately. And did Jasker just say he memorized the bestiary?
Your stitches suck, Geralt. They're terrible. They're the reason you have so many damn scars. I think the scars are sexy, and they really are, darling, trust me. But I also know they annoy you. It wouldn't be so bad if you would just take a little better care of yourself, but you never do. It's like you have some Richard Matcher bullshit voice in your head that tells you all this nonsense about doing the bare minimum when it comes to your health. It's ridiculously counterintuitive.
Geralt shuts him up with a kiss. The angle is wrong, but he doesn't care. What really matters is Jasker's breath against his lips and the moment of silence it brings for Geralt to speak. Words are useless, worthless, pointless things. He cannot command them as Jasker does. He cannot portion them out strategically as Vesemir does. He cannot strike with them like Lambert or strategize with them like Eskel. They are a blunt sword, an empty potion vial. Geralt does not know what to do with words. But he knows the right ones here.
Thank you,
he says. It's not enough, not nearly, but it's a start. He repeats the words, this time against Jasker's jaw, and again at his neck, and again at the soft skin of his shoulder. Geralt pushes tinctures and herbs gently out of the way and lays Jasker down, breathing out his gratitude in soft kisses and the only two words that feel right. He says them until the syllables lose meaning, until the only word left in his lover's mouth is his name. They stumble downstairs much later and fall into bed with Eskel and Lambert. Winter sets in for good that night, closing off the past with snow and freezing them all in for the months to come. Geralt doesn't care. The time is his now to be with his brothers and Jasker, to perhaps unlearn some old habits. From the relaxed set of Eskel's shoulders during dinner, and the pride on Lambert's face, they've already started without him. Words and wound care. Geralt never was skilled with either. Good thing then that Jasker is both a poet and a healer, and many other things besides. As Geralt drifts off to sleep, he promises to learn them all.